Hi, welcome to Miracle Making Psychology and Tarot Tools with my 2-minute macro lesson. Today I continue the conversation about conscious communication we started last week. I want to dive deeper into the vulnerable feelings we tend to hide under the anger, sometimes even from ourselves. Write your name in the comments below, say hello as you join, even on the replay say hello. So, today's topic, vulnerable feelings we hide under the anger. Well, for those who doesn't know me, my name is Tatiana Morris. I'm a conscious relationships expert. I combine the knowledge I have from being a tarot reader, a mental health counselor, and a cosmology healer to help people understand themselves and others on a deep emotional level and build healthy relationships. I spent last 15 years of my life accumulating knowledge in an attempt to understand myself and other people, and now I want to share this knowledge with you. Today my clients are men and women who struggle with relationships with themselves and others. They either don't know how to build a happy relationship with a partner we already have, or they struggle to even find a partner. So, our today's topic is the vulnerable feelings hidden behind the anger. Have you ever heard about anger covering other more vulnerable feelings? If you have, type yes in comments. Okay, let's dive in. So, vulnerable feelings hiding behind the anger carry the unconscious beliefs, and by understanding them, you understand how you interpret situation emotionally. And emotional beliefs are different from logical, pragmatic, conscious beliefs. So, do you know how to do that? How to see your emotional beliefs? Tell me yes below. Tell me yes below if you ever heard about it, of emotional versus rational beliefs. Do you know anyone who can benefit from those tips? Write their name below. So, in the Conscious Communication Guide, I only list a few vulnerable feelings that people often experience in conflictual situations, such as fear, shame, guilt, hurt, despair or hopelessness, and helplessness. I wouldn't say that those are all the vulnerable feelings, and this list is extensive, no, by any means, but I couldn't just come up with any others that will be relevant. So let's go through these feelings and understand them better. So first of them is fear. I'm sure it's the most familiar to everyone. Fear informs us that there is a danger. Like any other animals, we have it built into our nervous system. Fear is an instinct, so we cannot help feeling it. We all do. But what we can do is we can work reducing the number of occasions when we feel it. Because what happens is our mind tries to protect us. And by doing that in its own very particular way, it often creates more fear by coming up with all possible things that can go wrong, or all possible disasters that can happen in each and every situation, even though the possibility of those disasters are pretty low. And so, in this case, the mind actually creates the fear, and the whole body and nervous system responds to it. And people live in it, right? So, and worry and anxiety is a diluted form of fear. It's not as intense as just fear. So that's why in the guide you can see that it's still under the same thing, because it's the same feeling. And so it is very important that your fears, and everyone has them, that you can understand them because it helps you understand yourself. Your fears, they tell you a story. And in my work with clients, I help them understand those fears, and I teach them to soothe themselves and reduce the frequency and intensity through increasing the awareness of what happens with them. Well, anyway, we have a long list, so I'll stop about fear here. Obviously, there is a lot to say. Well, the next one is shame. It carries the belief I'm bad, in contrast to guilt, which carries the belief I did something bad. Shame extrapolates those bad actions onto the person. Shame is a very uncomfortable feeling, and sometimes people confuse it with anxiety because it, you know, makes them feel uncomfortable, right? And guess what? The higher are your expectations of yourself, the more shame you will feel. Just because. And obviously, perfectionists, my favorite people, they are often paralyzed by the height of their expectations and the fear of shame they will feel if they don't comply with those, well, often unrealistic expectations. And so, because I work a lot with perfectionists, I have practices and techniques in place to help them reduce their expectations and thereby reduce their paralysis. The next feeling is guilt. Guilt often comes together with the shame, and sometimes it's hard to separate them. I would guess the reason being is that we all learn that you can understand who someone is judging by their actions. However, I think there is a big gap in that logic, being that the motivation of actions uh, of a person who is not you may be based on totally different reasons compared the reasons that you would have to do those actions based on according on your own rules and values. And so that's why to really understand someone we need to know like their values and rules, how they perceive the world, and like where their actions are coming from. Without that, judging by actions may not be fully accurate. And I guess one big example is the cultural differences. Just because different cultures have different rules. Okay, enough about that. The next feeling is hurt. It's a very interesting feeling. Well, and also, well, hurtful, unpleasant. It's a feeling of rejection. It carries the belief I'm not loved, and it's often present in personal conflicts because there is an expectation of being loved. Again, like with all of those feelings, it can get very complicated because the emotional beliefs have nothing to do with reason or logic. And so that's why uh, there is no need to look for logic of having a certain thing. Uh, and so I often spend a lot of time explaining the fact that emotions and logic have different logic to my male clients, because we often think that if something is irrational or unreasonable, and they don't think that those beliefs are not in their psyche or unconscious, which is not always accurate. So basically, if your conscious mind rejects something, it doesn't mean necessarily that the unconscious does the same. Those two operate on very different principles and beliefs. Our next feeling, sadness. And that's a feeling I didn't list in the guide because I don't consider it that vulnerable. Most of the time, people are okay with accepting sadness, the feeling of loss. However, when a belief and nothing is going to get better adds to the current loss, sadness turns into despair or hopelessness. And it's a very dangerous feeling that often makes people to spiral down in their mood more and more. Very often, it also makes people fall into self pity, which is an extremely dangerous experience because it sucks people into victimhood. And, well, it's really hard to get out. Well, the last on our list, last but not the least, helplessness. It's a very uncomfortable feeling. On my scale, it's somewhere around the shame. So, some people consider helplessness more uncomfortable than shame, others prefer shame, think it's more uncomfortable, but it all depends on the experience. So, helplessness carries the belief I cannot change the situation. As we all carry emotional memories from being vulnerable and helpless as children, this feeling is usually associated with the worst experiences in life. This is why people tend to avoid it. And if you want a proof of how society as a collective feels about helplessness, just check out all those superhero movies. They are never helpless, are they? So, that's in short our whole list of vulnerable feelings. There is no doubt we can talk a lot more about each of those, and maybe we will in the future, but not right now. And one more thing. You may wonder why we don't talk about physical experiences of the feelings and why I didn't give an extensive description of each in the guide. Well, the reason being is different people experience the same feelings in a little bit different way. For example, fear is one of the most physiologically defined experiences, but still people are aware and recognize the signs of their like fear or anxiety differently, and sometimes they can't even separate it from shame, for example. And so the physical experience of feelings depends of perception and awareness of the physical experience of a person. So, and each person is in a different place about it. This is why I give a pretty general description in the guide. In my work with clients, I actually help them increase their awareness of those emotional states using the methods I developed while working on my own self-understanding. And so that's why when I work with my clients, I can help them go for the individual experience, but it wouldn't be necessarily accurate to extrapolate it to everyone. Well, that's all for today. For those of you who would like the conscious communication guide that goes along with what we are talking about, I'll put up the link below. Bye.